All right, President Trump posting on Truth Social, people live in homes, not corporations, and he's pushing Congress to act. It's a move intended to reinvigorate the American dream.
We want to preserve the wealth that a lot of people have accrued in their homes while also making it possible for young people to afford their first home, make it affordable for young families to raise young families. I think if you really give people a sense of ownership in this country, a sense that they can build something, build a nest egg, build a family, that is the trick to reinvigorating the American dream.
So is banning large housing investors a path to the American dream, or a government intrusion full of unintended consequences? Jillian, what do you say? Can I come to you first on this? What's your reaction?
Awesome.
Okay.
I remember this in 2020 specifically. And I sold my house in 2021, and one of these investment firms wanted to actually buy the house so they could rent it out. And I have much younger siblings who've struggled with this. And I was seeing young people swarming the internet, complaining about the fact that companies like Zillow were buying up all these houses to rent them out and make the younger generation forever tenants. I think this is awesome.
Okay.
I can't understand it from your perspective, but from a layman's terms, I love this. And I've heard it's a huge problem.
I feel a little debate brewing.
Oh, really? Okay, teach me.
So let's see. Jackie, I'll come to you next. What do you think about it?
So I understand the president has a problem with housing right now. Rates are high. Prices have just gone up since the time that you're talking about. Really, they were on the rise into COVID. And then with low rates, the prices just really kind of got out of control. And so something has to happen to balance the housing market. We understand that. But I'm just not sure that I love what he's doing here, because I really am a free markets person. And I think that, you know, going and saying that one entity, investors or private equity, can't buy these homes and rent them out, I mean, where's his authority to do that? I think he's going to be questioned and potentially need congressional approval to be able to do this, which I don't think that he will get. I agree that it will create a situation that will allow more individuals to get into the housing market, which is what we want because it's been part of the American dream. I'm not taking a position on whether I think it's kind of right or wrong. I'm just looking at what he's trying to do. And I'm stepping back and thinking that there are reasons that private equity is flocking to the housing market, because I have a good friend in private equity, runs a firm. Traditionally, what they would do is take basically troubled businesses and either try to turn them around or break them up, sell off the parts. That's one aspect. Private equity has really branched out and fanned out into so many different things now, including the housing market. But I'm thinking about smart people sitting back saying, how do you make a good investment given the lay of the land and the way things are today? And so housing seemed like it was a good option, which is what attracted all that capital there. I just worry with the president taking stakes, government stakes in companies like Intel, and doing certain things. I think his intention is good, but I don't, even though I like him,
that unintended
think he should overstep.
Issue. Okay, so I do think it's true that he wants this to be congressionally approved. That's the route he wants to go on this. Dagan, I'm going to come to you. I just throw a couple of stats out, and I see differing figures, but they're all around this ballpark. Large institutional investors, like the kind being targeted here, own about 2% of single-family rentals, about 1%, slightly less, of single-family homes. So they loom large in our imagination. We could debate the numbers, but numerically, I don't think they're as big as we think they are. But maybe you've got different data. Dagan, take it away.
The large institutional investors like Cerberus, Blackstone owns a couple, I think a couple of, they bought Home Partners in 2021, a $6 billion deal. Tricon Residential, that was another 38,000 U.S. rental homes. It's worth noting that Steve Schwarzman, Blackstone's chief executive, is a great benefactor politically to President Trump's political operation for many years. So 2% of the nation's single-family rental housing stock are these big institutional investors. 30% of single-family home purchases beginning of last year were investors. But it's the small investor that accounts for 90% of the market of investor owners. So when President Trump talks about this, how big is big? Is it just Blackstone's? Because are you going to crack down on people who have sopped up properties, say, across Florida or Arizona, who are renting them out as Airbnbs? Because quite frankly, those people are keeping properties off the market. That's a large part of the supply problem in the United States. But you talked about the authority. President Trump's stealing an idea from Elizabeth Warren. If that doesn't make you shake in your boots, I don't know what will. But President Trump has shown that he gets to meddle in your business and will happily do so. That is established. Intel, taking some of the revenue from chip sales of NVIDIA and AMD to China. But that's called one ginormous bully pulpit. And he may have no way of actually banning the purchase of single-family homes by these investors, but he doesn't need to actually ban it. He doesn't need to screw Blackstone, as an example, on home buying. Blackstone knows that President Trump and his ilk can screw them in other ways on regulations or the power of the federal purse. So you can throw your weight around in a major way, and whatever the benefit is derived by these big firms from buying single-family homes, they're just going to stop doing it to prevent him from getting big, mad, bigly ugly at them in other ways. So it's the power of the bully pulpit. I don't like it, but that's what's going on. And I would argue that probably not out there even sopping up these properties at this point. You ought to worry about them dumping them on the market and driving home prices down.
Oh, interesting. Okay, Taylor, let me get sentimental for a second. Okay, I'm going to get not economic, I'm going to get sentimental, all right? I think there's non-economic value
Bingo.
in owners occupying homes, family formation, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so you probably don't like this idea either, is my guess. Are there other good things that could be done to encourage that wouldn't be so market distorting or invade private property? Like, I don't know, maybe could you get a bigger homesteading tax break at the federal level or something that would advantage living in the home that you own? I throw that out there to you because the sentimental side of me wants maybe something here, maybe there's nothing there.
No, so Jillian, I agree with you from that sentimental point of view. I was talking yesterday about how my in-laws were in a neighborhood and a big corporation, a big institutional investor came up and they moved because they deteriorated the value of the neighborhood, the community, right? When you have a community of renters versus owners, we know that it changes what it looks like. As a homeowner and a renter myself, I know that when I'm a homeowner, I typically take care of the property a little bit more. When I'm renting, I don't care as much if I accidentally scrape the wall. I'm not there doing my whitewashing to really get that scrape off. And so when we think about a neighborhood and the non-economic incentives of owning a home, I like home ownership in a theory of teaching responsibility. So I understand that. Brian, to your point, yes, I don't think going after a big institutional buyer is the way to do it, though there are pockets of neighborhoods that I've seen that can be impacted by that. Bill Pulte, I think, said it best. Instead of drill, baby, drill, let's build, baby, build. Let's get all that blue tape out of the way. I know we're going to talk about the Palisades fire at the bottom of this segment, right? If you get all that big blue tape, and I'm calling it blue tape, not red tape.
I hear that, yes. Clever.
Then let's build. Let's incentivize. He also said, if let's say institutional investors are banned, which I don't think it would actually happen, does that take away portions of buyers? What does that do to demand? There's still going to be so much demand for housing that if you took that segment of buyers away, that wouldn't impact it. I think we've talked on this program about big supply side tax cuts. Let's talk about supply side on the housing side, right? So much I think you can do to incentivize builders to build. Let's talk about getting those starter homes back for, at those prices that Americans can afford when they're really just starting to form families. I think those are better incentives and things to do.
Really quick.
Rents and home prices have actually already softened in some of the Sun Belt cities that have seen the most construction.
Really quickly, Jillian, I like what Taylor's saying in terms of get rid of the regulation, bring it down. But I know you know from where you live, and you've seen this, that moves at a glacial pace. And in politics, glacial pace isn't great when you're trying to compete for a midterm.
I can't speak to the legalities of everything you guys are talking about. I just know that the system in my business is rigged for big business, and it disenfranchises and disadvantages the little guy. And when we get to the Palisades, I'm going to have a lot to say about that one, where I think that we'll get to it when we get to it. But I hear everything you're saying as experts. I just feel like young people cannot afford homes, and having seen these monster companies coming in and outbidding them easily, swiftly, I guess I don't know the numbers or the law, but
Jillian, your reaction, though, just right out of the gate was the reason that President Trump came
I
out
get
and
it.
said it.
I see what you're saying.
And it's because it's a midterm election year.
Right, I see.
And and people have experienced this, they've seen it, and that's why he came out and said it. And to my point, it's like he doesn't actually have to do anything.
I get
He just has to say it, and these big companies will back off.
If it's happened to you, you feel it intently, and your feelings are strong. All right.